This video was requested by OAW patron Khalil Young. Salute to you. And if you have a request for a discussion video or a review, become a patron of OAW Entertainment at patreon.com/OAW. And with that being said, here are my thoughts on Matt Reeves' The Batman.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
All right. Once again, I want to give another huge shout out to OAW patron Khalil Young. His request was for me to give my thoughts on the development of the upcoming 2021 DC superhero film, The Batman, co-written and directed by Matt Reeves of the, I guess you could say, new Planet of the Apes trilogy. And also Let Me In. So anyway, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and give you all my thoughts on how the film is shaping up so far. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and let's start off this video by talking about what got us to this point, right? Like everything that was going on in the early phases and the early development of this project. So for those of you all who may not know, this film originally was intended to be, or to kick off rather, the Batman film franchise reboot that was originally intended to star Ben Affleck, right? Like this was supposed to be the film that his Batman was supposed to star in, and that's the Batman that was depicted in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, as well as Justice League. And this was supposed to be like the first solo film for the DCEU Batman, right? So what happened with that? What happened with that whole thing? All right, well, let me take you all on a little trip down memory lane. Now, some of you all may have been keeping up with the news, may have been keeping up with the developments as they were happening in real time. And of course, I've discussed certain aspects of this on the channel previously, but to get everybody up to speed, this is what happened. So after Ben Affleck and his writing partner, Chris Terrio, after they won the Academy Award for Argo, they were pretty much hired by Warner Brothers and by DC. Well, at the time, it wasn't regarded as DC Films, but pretty much the DC sector of the Warner Brothers film studio. And essentially, they were given the keys to the kingdom because Affleck was hired to star, write, produce, and direct this film. So when he got brought on, and cast as Batman for BVS, while that was going on, while Justice League was going on, bear with me now, that was the original intention, right? He was going to come on, do BVS. He was actually, if memory serves, he was even pegged. Okay, all right, I'm jumping ahead of the story. I'm sorry, bear with me. Okay, so that was the original idea when Affleck was brought on. All right, he does BVS. BVS comes out, and of course, it came out to polarizing reception, right? Because critics panned it, and amongst audiences, it was split. Seems like half of the audience liked it, half of the audience hated it. And then the financial numbers came out. The box office figures came out. And while its initial weekend did really, really well, they found out based off of the second weekend, based off of that revenue, that box office drop, they knew that at best they could only hope to break even with the film, which I believe with BVS, that's exactly what happened. They barely broke even. Like they made just over their money back, essentially. So because of everything that happened with BVS, there was some course correction that they were considering back at Warner Brothers. And for a moment, there was even the idea that Affleck might co-write and direct Justice League. Because essentially after BVS, Goyer was gone. David Goyer was gone. And for those of y'all who do not know, David Goyer is the writer who co-wrote the Christopher Nolan trilogy of Batman films, and then he co-wrote Man of Steel, BVS, and they used some of his work for Justice League. But to what degree did Goyer's work make it into the final draft of the film? I'm not entirely sure. But he did write the first draft of the Justice League script with Zack Snyder. Well, after BVS, like I said, they wanted to make some change ups, right? So yeah, there was a bunch of different ideas that were thrown around. Chris Terrio came on to sort of try to, fix the script, as it were, for Justice League, But essentially, and then of course, even while this was going on, months later, I think almost a year later, we found out that Zack Snyder was leaving Justice League, and then we found out why, because of the tragedy he and his wife suffered. And then they brought on Joss Whedon. And okay, so by this point, things aren't looking good for Affleck. I think even Affleck himself knew it was coming. But okay, so then we get Justice League. Justice League comes out. By now, what is this? This is November of 2017. Okay, by November of 2017, once Justice League had finally been released theatrically, okay, there was enough writing on the wall to know that Affleck was not sticking around. But Warner Brothers still had not made the official announcement. And from what I heard, from what I read, from some of the sources that I have in the industry, I know, right? It's kind of crazy. I have sources in the industry. Okay, long story short, Affleck was going through a lot of personal stuff. And we know that eventually he ended up checking himself into rehab. From what my sources told me and from what I read from other sources, Warner Brothers could not officially make the announcement that Affleck had stepped down and had backed out of this film because the terms of his contract prevented him from being terminated while he was in rehab. Essentially, that's how it worked. He like they couldn't can him. Not yet. So that's pretty much where we were with that. But eventually, as all the evidence suggested, Affleck eventually stepped down. Matt Reeves came in, which once again, sort of a similar situation that kind of happened with Ben Affleck, because Matt Reeves, like I mentioned earlier in this video, he did the what was it? The Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then War for the Planet of the Apes. He did that trilogy for Warner Brothers, massively successful. So yeah, it kind of only made sense that because of the way Warner Brothers operate, they like to go to the people that have made the money in the past. So him stepping in kind of made sense, right? So, but then, you know what was funny about this? This project has actually been in limbo for the greater part of 2018. I think for the bulk of 2018, this project was in limbo. We knew Matt Reeves was attached to it, but that's all we knew. That's all we knew. So yeah, so now let's fast track to 2019, and that's when we start getting more news about this film, right? Like we're starting to get the castings. We started to get the writers and whatnot on it. And now we actually we know, because I just looked this up. They're shooting it now. Principal photography has begun on the film. They're shooting right now in London. And it's been slated for a June 25th, 2021 release. All right. So now I've kind of gotten us all track on, like we're all up to speed, present day, what's going on with this film. So time for my thoughts on it. All right. So first thing first, Matt Reeves, damn good choice. Damn good choice. There is not a single Matt Reeves film that I have seen that I didn't like. Matt Reeves, another film to his credit, because as I mentioned before, the Planet of the Apes trilogy, Let Me In, which is one of my favorites. Kind of funny because in one of my recent live Q&As, somebody asked me like, what were, you know, some of my favorite films from the 2010 decade. Let Me In would definitely be on that list. I love that movie. Oh, and then of course Cloverfield, which is probably the first Matt Reeves film I ever saw, was Cloverfield. I saw that opening weekend. And I totally dug that movie. Granted, it wasn't everything I thought it was going to be, but it was still an interesting film, and it was a cool viewing experience. Because it was one of the first films that me and actually I think it was the first film that me and my best friend saw when we were in college, our freshman year in college. So that was pretty cool. So Matt Reeves, that is an excellent choice for a director in my opinion. And I would even go as far as to say even his writing credit, because I think he wrote the script for Let Me In, which of course is the American remake of the Swedish film Let the Right One In. I think Matt Reeves wrote the script for that one. But yeah, he's a very good director, a very competent writer. Now, real quick, I will look up his writing partner, Mattson Tomlin. I will look. Oh yeah, that's right. I looked him. I looked him up the other night. He doesn't really have a lot of writing credits. Actually, he has no writing credits that have been released thus far. None. Because he has one writing credit, Little Fish, but that film hasn't been released yet. And then there's another project that he's working on that's not coming out until next year. So suffice it to say, he is an unknown writer. Yeah, he's an unknown writer. So, I mean, it's an unknown, right? Like I don't have enough evidence to actually make a good judgment call on this writer. I'm excited though. I'm curious as to how he landed this gig. You know, because like I said, Warner Brothers, dude, nepotism is big over at Warner Brothers. And like I said, they tend to give big projects to creators who have made the money in the past. So the fact that an unknown has been brought onto this project is very surprising. I wonder if Matt Reeves selected this writer personally, because that would make a little bit more sense, right? Because it's someone he's familiar with and someone he feels confident in working with. That I would trust over anybody like in the studio system. You know what I'm saying? Any of the execs. I don't see any of the execs making this call, but who knows? Who knows? I tell you what, if it came from an exec, I actually do like the fact that execs are looking for untapped talent, because Warner Brothers has never done that before. They've never done that before. So that's a good sign. That's a move in the right direction. But I'm gonna tell you all the thing that actually has me the most intrigued about this movie, and that's the cast. Now, before I get into this, y'all roll with me on this one. As much as I disliked the DCEU, because of all the movies released under the DCEU banner, I only enjoyed two of them, Wonder Woman and Aquaman. And even Wonder Woman was a fine film. I didn't like enjoy it per se. It was fine. Aquaman is the only movie where I legitimately like enjoyed it. Like I was like, damn, that was actually pretty good. So, but with all of the criticism I've had about the DCEU, the one criticism I never made, going all the way back to Man of Steel, was casting. The DC but it's also been the most frustrating thing about those movies, because the castings have always been good. Yes, Ben Affleck would have made a great Bruce Wayne / Batman. Yes, Jared Leto would have made a phenomenal Joker. Yes, the castings for the DCEU have been 90% of the time perfect. The problems have never been the casting. It's been the material. It's been the material. If you want to make the argument that, oh, well, if the actor was so great, then the material shouldn't have mattered, right? Because we have examples of that. Look at Margot Robbie. Look at Chris Pine, right? Yes, if the performance is good enough, the material doesn't really matter to a certain degree, right? We've seen plenty of examples where great actors have been able to take mediocre to bad material and make it memorable, right? But let's be honest, we've also seen great castings totally underused because of lackluster material. See Anthony Hopkins in the Thor movies for a good example of what I'm talking about. But the problem with the DCEU has never been the casting, it's been the material. That being said, the casting for this film is actually pretty good. I can't lie, it's actually pretty good. And I'm gonna pull up the list for you all so you guys can see the castings that we got for this film so far. So let's go ahead and let's bring up Wikipedia. All right. So, and let me blow this up a little bit for the people in the back. For the people in the back. All right. So let's do this. All right. So far the casting so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne / Batman. All right. So here's the thing with that. I know the reservation that a lot of people have because Robert Pattinson, and let's be fair about this too. Robert Pattinson, before he became famous, or essentially when he became famous, what do we have? We have a supporting role in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Warner Brothers production. And then, of course, he was the face of the Twilight franchise, another Warner Brothers production. So, yes, he's made a boat ton of money for the studio. So this casting choice is sort of more in line with Warner Brothers' standard operating procedure. But that being said, there is some untapped potential here. And this is what I mean. Ever since the Twilight movies, I have been hearing time and time again about these small indie type movies that Robert Pattinson has been doing, where apparently his performances have been good. Recently, The Lighthouse. I've heard nothing but good things about The Lighthouse, and I've heard nothing but good things about his performance in that film. I think I think he could pull it off. But Robert Pattinson is one of those castings, I think, where it is going to be dependent on the material. If he's given bad material, we are potentially looking at another what's my boy from the Star Wars prequels, Hayden Christensen, right? Which Hayden Christensen, actually, believe it or not, I don't even think is a bad actor. But he is material dependent. If you give him bad material, he can't elevate it. You got to give him good material. So yeah, I'm not saying that Robert Pattinson is a worse actor than Hayden Christensen or the same actor or even potentially a better actor. But I do think that this is what I'm saying. His performance in this film, I do think will be dependent on the material. I think it will be. And this is what I mean by that. If the material for this film is bad, people are going to crucify Robert Pattinson. But if the material is good, I think Robert Pattinson could get by on phoning it in. Let me put myself on camera real quick so y'all mark it now. This is what I think. I think one of these two is very likely. If the material for this film is bad, people will totally blame Robert Pattinson, totally independent of whether or not his performance was actually bad. If the material itself is bad, I think he's totally going to get crucified by moviegoers, right? But I do think that if the material is good, I think it's possible he can skate by on a performance. I don't even think, if the material is that good, I don't even think his performance has to be that good. And people will praise him for it, despite the fact that it might not potentially even be his acting. It might just be that good of a material. I totally think that one of those two things is more likely to happen then, because what would I like? I would like good material in a good performance. But that's unproven. I can't say that that'll happen because I think it's unproven. Matt Reeves, I think, has the goods. I'm not convinced about Pattinson. So because I'm not convinced about Pattinson, I think one of the two other examples I gave is more likely to happen. The former of which is totally unfair to Pattinson because he could give a good performance. But if the material is crummy, people are going to crap all over him. On the flip side of that, if the material is that good, okay, how about this? If the material is good enough, I don't think Pattinson can mess it up. That's pretty much what I'm saying. If the material is good enough, I don't think he can mess it up. That's the level of confidence I have in Robert Pattinson. That's it right there. That's it. Right there. I think he's as good enough of an actor that if he has good enough material, he won't screw up. But if the material is not that good, I am not convinced that he can elevate that material with his performance. I'm not convinced. All right, back to the casting. Let me go ahead and throw out one more caveat. One more in terms of Robert Pattinson. Because his supporting cast is pretty freaking awesome. Let me explain. Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon. Oh, snap. Let me go back to my page. All right, here we go. Jeffrey Wright, this man as James Gordon. That's a damn good casting. That is a damn good casting. Me personally, I would have preferred to see him as Alfred, but I think he would do a really interesting James Gordon. I really do. I really do. And this, let me see. So this film has him as the commissioner. So off top, okay. So this is what's pretty interesting about this. Apparently, we're doing a young Batman, right? We're doing a young Batman. But but Gordon is already going to be commissioner at this time. Okay, so we're doing so that's kind of interesting because in a lot of the previous interpretations of these characters, while Gordon is an older man than Bruce, usually they're both starting out relatively around the same time. And we actually have Frank Miller to thank for that, for his year one story, because ever since year one, a lot of the other interpretations of the characters have been depicted in that light, where young Batman is usually dealing with a lieutenant, a lieutenant or a Sergeant Gordon or something like that. Like Gordon hasn't made it to commissioner yet. Hell, even Christopher Nolan did that in his Dark Knight trilogy. Because I think in the first film, I don't even think Gordon was a lieutenant in the first film. I think he becomes a lieutenant in the Dark Knight, and he becomes commissioner at the end. He becomes lieutenant at the end of Batman Begins, and then he becomes commissioner at the end of the Dark Knight. So, okay, but anyway, Jeffrey Wright, damn good choice. Damn good choice. All right, y'all. Get your towels out because there's about to be some sweating in the building in a minute. About to be some sweating. Zoë Kravitz or as my man Mike Coulter on Luke Cage season 1 most adequately quoted. He says, or as I like to call her, Godfather Part 2, right? Better than the original, right? Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. Damn good choice. Damn good choice. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. That's going to be very interesting. And the thing that has me the most intrigued about Zoe's casting is this quote right here, where it says, Kravitz said that in contrast to Batman, who represents masculinity, Catwoman represents femininity, and femininity represents power. And I think it's a different kind of power than masculine power. Slightly more complicated and softer too. That I think is very important. And I think that mentality in approaching the role, I think is going to be one of the signifiers. That's going to be one of the distinctive distinctions. It's going to be one of the distinctions that will probably make Zoe's performance stand out compared to previous portrayals of that character, but also compared to all the other female characters in the DCEU right now. Because it is different. It's different than Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. It's different than Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. And it's even different than all the portrayals, what we got coming out with that Birds of Prey catastrophe that's getting ready to drop. Well, by the time this video is released, I think it will have already dropped. But that's different. That's different than all those other characters. That's different. So it actually makes me hopeful for this. Yeah, it makes me hopeful for that. All right. So let me get back to this. All right. Next up on the list, Paul Dano as the Riddler. This dude is a really good actor, for real. If you all have ever seen him in There Will Be Blood, or if you have seen him in that, what was it? Escape from, oh God, the miniseries that aired on Showtime last year. What was that called? Escape from where, what is the name of it? What is the name of it? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Escape from Dano. Oh yeah. If you have seen any of his performances in just those two productions alone, this dude is probably I would argue, one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood. He's good. This boy is good. Now I don't know what interpretation of the Riddler they'll do for this, but if they do anything in the vein of an underestimated Riddler, if they do anything that is sort of like of course, hopefully, I'm hoping that, of course, they do sort of the, the criminal mastermind, borderline sociopath, hell, even damn near Machiavellian sort of Riddler, like that Edward Nygma. I'm hoping they do something more like that. But he is, if they do the unassuming Riddler, which is pretty much what I mean when I say the unassuming Riddler, I'm talking about the Riddler that no one really takes seriously and the one that no one really considers a threat. But he is so many steps ahead of everybody that when the shit does hit the fan, everyone is, the worse for it. And he had your number the entire time because you didn't consider him a threat. You never saw him coming. That Riddler, Paul Dano can play that Riddler. And I'm pretty sure he can play that Riddler really, really well. So I'm totally stoked for that. That's a damn good casting. Andy Serkis as Alfred. Andy Serkis as Alfred. That one was a little surprising. Well, it was surprising that he would be Alfred. It's not surprising that Andy Serkis was cast because, of course, like I mentioned, he was the star of that Planet of the Apes trilogy. He's worked with Warner Brothers in that trilogy. He's worked with them in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and in the Hobbit trilogy. Like, he is a favorite of that studio. So it's not surprising he got cast. It's surprising that it's Alfred. Because I figured they would have cast him as one of the villains. But that's a very interesting take. I don't know what they'll do with it, but I'm excited to see Serkis in that role. I think he could do a really good job. I'm more interested in the way in which Alfred will be written. And I'm interested to see how, depending on what that is, if that will complement Serkis or if it'll be the type of performance that Serkis will have to, pretty much go into his trick bag and do something we haven't seen him done before. But dude, Serkis is such a versatile performer. He is so versatile. He can pretty much do damn near any role you need him to do. I'm convinced about that. Black Panthers convinced me of that. Because even like his portrayal as Claw, if you notice the way Claw was written in like Age of Ultron versus how he's written in Black Panther, two totally different characters. And Serkis does both of them seamlessly. So I have total faith in Serkis. I'm just more interested on what this Alfred will be. All right, I'm gonna be honest with you all. Of all the casting choices that have been released so far, this one is by far my favorite. Colin Farrell as the frickin' Penguin. I love Colin Farrell. I've always been a fan of Colin Farrell. He's one of my favorite actors. I love him even in roles other people didn't like him, even in movies other people didn't like. I loved him in Daredevil as Bullseye. I absolutely loved him in that. He was the only thing that I really enjoyed from the him in the Big Man, but Fantastical Beasts and Where to Find Them, the Harry Potter spinoff. I went to see that just because Farrell was in it in the first one. Yeah, I love Colin Farrell. Love Colin Farrell. And so for him to take on the Penguin, oh my goodness, there are so many different, how they'll do Penguin, what that interpretation is going to look like, we don't know yet. I would personally love to see something more in the vein of the Telltale Penguin, because I love that version of that character, that young sort of like Cogni, that sort of like British street thug. Well, not a British street thug, because he's the leader, right? So like that British mobster. But that street level mobster, the one like that Manchester Black sort of interpretation of Oswald Cobblepot. I love that one so much. Farrell, I think, is a little old for that take, but if you portray him as sort of like Because remember what Cobblepot is, right? He comes from old money. So if you do that whole like old money turned sort of like British slumlord almost, right? Like that street level mobster, right? Like that like, and okay, not, I keep saying street level. I don't mean that he's a thug or that he's a muscle. No, Cobblepot should answer to nobody. But if he's that like that British underbelly, right? Like that London underworld type mob boss, right? That has connections to British aristocrat, aristocracy, that could work. That could work. The other, and like I said, the other thing that having an actor as old as Colin Farrell, you could totally do, because remember, like he has to be much older than Bruce, right? He should be the living witness to the fall of the House of Cobblepot, because he should be old enough to remember when the family was still respectable, but still young enough to have to try and rebuild the family, as it were. You could even write it to where he was responsible for the fall of the house in his early youth. So when you do it like that, he becomes that sort of like dark analog, right? Like he could be what Bruce might become, right? Because he was a young man, a rich young man at some point in time too, right? And then look what became of him. So he becomes sort of like that dark analog, that thing that Bruce might become. Not Batman, but Bruce himself. Bruce might become Oswald Cobblepot, right? That you could do that. You could really do that. Hell, dude, I would love it if they even did it to where maybe he's a mentor of Bruce or a former mentor of Bruce. Maybe he was friends with Bruce's father. Yeah. What if he was once the protege of Thomas, and then after Thomas died, struck out on his own, got into the criminal underworld, and then of course, what happened to him. And so Bruce coming up now, he's sort of like taking the Bruce, because it's like, yeah, your old man was my mentor and he was cut down before his time, and so I had to go into the world on my own, and I know how rough and how dirty and grimy and grungy. I know what it takes in order for a man in our position to ascend to the heights of power. So Bruce, I'm going to take you under my wing, right? Under the Penguin's wing. That I would freaking love to see, that sort of relationship between him and Bruce. But once again, this is all speculation and we don't know. So yeah, we don't know. And then finally, John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. Very, very interesting pick. But Turturro can do New York style Italian mobster better than a lot. Better. Hell, I would even say better than most. Because of like this is what I mean when I say better than most, because of course we have the Hollywood mafia Hall of Famers, right? Pacino, De Niro, Pesci, like we have those, right? But Turturro early in his career did a lot of everyday man. He did a lot of like common Italian New Yorker. He did a lot of those. He did a lot of those roles, like in Do the Right Thing. He works in his father's pizzeria. He is the scorned boyfriend in Jungle Fever, right? Like we've seen him do like that common everyday Italian New Yorker, right? We've seen him do that. Carmine Falcone should be the type of guy that did not grow up in the mafia. You feel me? He is not mafia royalty. He made his family what it is. He came up, Falcone came up through the mob, through the mafia. He did that. He cut his teeth, went right up through the ranks from associate to enforcer to soldier to capo to to conciliary to underboss to boss, right? Like he made his family. So Turturro, I think, could do that sort of interpretation of the mob boss who wasn't always there. You feel me? Like at one point he swept the floors of the neighborhood pizzeria. Maybe he was a paper boy at one point. Maybe like a Henry Hill almost, right? Like maybe he started out just running errands, parking cars, and then maybe you know what I'm saying? Like Turturro, I think, could play the old man who grew up idolizing the mafia. And he grew up as a kid looking up to them, right? But it wasn't until him, maybe he didn't even join until he was a teenager, sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? But he's not a Michael Corleone who was born into the family. You know what I mean? He's not a Bruno Tattaglia who was born into the family. So yeah, Turturro, I think, could pull that off very well. All right, so let us see. So this is some other production news. I don't really want to spend too much time on that. Honestly and truly, I think in terms of my early thoughts on the movie so far, I think that about cuts. I think that about does it. And I'm already checking on that 42 minutes. Yeah. That pretty much sums up my thoughts on that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the whole thing. From what we can tell so far, from everything I've gathered, it looks like this could be a special project. It really could. This could turn into something special. I think the players are there. The director is there. The cast is there. The fact that it's taken this long to even get the film off the ground, a lot of people saw that and they saw warning signs. They saw red flags. But that's not always the case, because that's even more time that you have to develop the film, to get the material right, to get the hiring right, to get the right people on board. The turnaround is actually pretty fast, though. If they've just started shooting now and it's coming out next summer, I mean, that's kind of typical for Hollywood. And who knows, maybe because it has taken this long, maybe they want to try and get it out as soon as possible. But I'm hoping that with what the original vision for what Matt Reeves said, what his vision for this film was, with the people involved, I think you can make it work. He really wanted to make this like a street level, a real practical effect heavy, sort of incorporate that realism that we got from the Nolan trilogy, but to make it more of a crime drama and a crime mystery and less of a superhero film. That might be the way to go. Because let's face it, all of the films in the DCEU prior are too bombastic. And the last Batman we saw in BVS and Justice, too bombastic. We need to bring it back down. We need to take it back down to brass tacks. Take it back down to ground level with this character. And they have an opportunity to do that. And I'm hoping they actually pull it off. So in my closing thoughts, in my final thoughts, I'm going to say this. I am more optimistic about this film than any other film in the DCEU prior. I feel good about this one. I think this one could really be something. So that's going to go ahead and that's going to wrap up this video. Once again, I want to take this time to thank OAW patron Khalil Young once again for requesting this this topic for discussion. Thank you so much. It's been very fun, really fun. Talking about this, really fun thinking about it, getting my thoughts out on camera. And once again, as always, if you guys want to request a topic for me to discuss, whether it's just a, off the cuffs call, all of my videos are off the cuff, right? Notice, right? But if you guys have like a topic you just want me to talk about, or if it's more structured towards my discussion of the week segment and whatnot, or heck, it can even be if you want to request something for me to review, a comic book, a manga, a movie, a TV show, an anime, anything like that, become a patron of OAW Entertainment at patreon.com/OAW. The link will be in the description box below. Check it out. Check out the tiers. I am in the process of, if I haven't done so by the time this video is posted, I'm going to be reworking the tiers a little bit because I want the discussion of the week tier, which is currently the $15 tier. I want that to also include, like I said, general topics for discussion, as well as like my top 5 list segment. I want to include that in that $15 tier as well. Probably by the time this video goes up, I will have made that change. But like I said, check out the Patreon. Once again, that is patreon.com/OAW. Check out the tiers. Also, if you have yet to do so, follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. All the links are listed below. Or if you just prefer to support the channel directly, the link to my PayPal is in the description box as well. And with that being, and as always, don't forget, if you like this video, give me your thoughts on this film. What do you guys think? Share it with anyone you think might get a kick of it. And finally, if you have yet to do so, if you want to keep up with me and my videos, my Let's Plays, my commentaries, Q&As, all of that jazz, subscribe to OAW Entertainment. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you click the bell so that you get the latest updates and notifications. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?